If you feel like you're working your butt off in the gym, but you're just not getting the results you want, trust me, I completely understand where you're coming from because for the longest time, that was me. But then I made some simple changes to my workouts and my training, and it pretty much doubled the rate that I saw results. It wasn't so much just one singular thing that sped up my progress, but it was the combination of a whole bunch of strategies that really made a big impact. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to work smarter, not harder, and you can apply these strategies to your training whether you're working out at the gym or at home. I've also got my laptop here so I don't miss anything out, so if I'm looking down, that's why. But I really just want to make sure that I cover absolutely everything so that you can finally start getting the results you deserve. This video is part 3 of our lean bulking series to help you build the most muscle possible while minimizing fat gain. And so far we've covered a lot of the nutrition side of things, so how to set up your calories and macros and then create your perfect bulking meal plan. So if building muscle is your goal, then make sure you go and catch up at the end of this video. Okay, let's jump in. So I'm assuming because you want to build muscle, you already know that you need to be doing at least some sort of resistance training. You can do resistance training in the traditional way that people tend to think about resistance training, which is lifting weights. But another thing that a lot of people don't tend to think about is resistance training could also be training using the resistance of your body weight. So that often includes things like Pilates or calisthenics, and they're both becoming a lot more popular nowadays, so there's loads of content out there. But today we're mainly going to focus on lifting weights, but the strategies can also be applied to bodyweight training. Right, part 1, training volume and frequency. You may have heard people in the fitness space referring to volume before, and essentially all it is the number of sets and reps you do for a certain muscle group per week. As a general rule of thumb, for most muscle groups, 4 sets per week is enough to maintain the amount of muscle mass that you currently have. The exact amount of total sets you need for growth per week will vary depending on how experienced you are in the gym, and beginners can see growth from as little as like 6 sets per week. As you get more advanced in the gym, you might have to start adding on more sets to continue to see progress, but we're going to cover more of the specifics on how you can see continuous progress and avoid getting into plateaus at the end of the video. So the optimal training volume for any given muscle group is generally considered to be between 10 to 20 sets per week. For most people, when you start getting close to 18 to 20 sets per week, this is going to be really hard for your body to actually recover from, so it may be detrimental. A big mistake that I made when I started the gym, and a lot of people make, is thinking that more is better. But really, we want to switch that mindset and think about how we can train to get the most bang for our buck. Personally, when I'm training for growth, I like to aim for about 10 sets per muscle group per week. And this is sort of on the middle to the lower end of the spectrum, but I would consider myself an intermediate lifter. And I've seen a lot of really good gains from that amount of training volume. And for optimal growth, I'd usually recommend training a certain muscle group 2 to 3 times per week. We'll cover rest days, exactly what you should do on them and when you should actually have a rest day a bit later on. But the way you distribute each of your workouts throughout the week is called your workout split. Some examples of common workout splits are push-pull legs, where for your first workout you train all of your muscles that are involved in pushing movements, and that's generally your chest, your triceps and shoulders. For your second workout, you train all the muscles that are involved in pulling movements, so mainly your back and biceps. When I used to do this workout split, I would also include side delts in my pull days as well. And then your third workout would be legs, which is just legs. If you've been doing full body workouts for a while and you've just decided that you want to start trying out splitting them up into separate muscle groups, then I'd say push-pull legs is a really good way to start. This is the split that I used at the start of my fitness journey, but as I started to progress, I noticed that my upper body was progressing a lot faster than my lower body, so that's why I switched to an upper-lower split. With an upper-lower split, essentially, the clue's in the name, but one day you train upper body, one day you train lower body, then you train upper body, then you train lower body, and essentially you can insert your rest days as and when you need them. And it's also really good because if, like, for example, in my case, my lower body was lacking, I could have 2 upper body days and 3 lower body days so that I would be prioritizing my lower body a bit more. An upper-lower split is also quite versatile in the fact that you can have like a 3-day split or a 4-day split or a 5-day split, and really all you have to choose from is an upper body session or a lower body session. I guess as a bit of a more advanced technique, I like to prioritize different muscle groups within the upper or the lower session on the different days. So for example, even though I have 3 lower body days per week, I don't just train all of legs every single session. I like to have a certain focus for each workout. So my first leg day is hamstrings and glutes focused, my second leg day is quads focused, and then my third leg day is again mostly glutes but also a little bit of hamstrings. So this is the kind of thing that you can do if you have certain muscle groups that you're really wanting to prioritize or bring up. And in my case, if you hadn't guessed, it's glutes. Yeah! Honestly, you guys, I have the worst glute genetics. I'm not even kidding. So the specific exercises that you actually choose to include in your workouts is obviously going to be very important. And that takes us on to part 2, which is exercise selection and form. If you're a beginner with the goal of overall muscle growth, I'd recommend focusing on compound movements. All compound movements are exercises that involve multiple joints or muscle groups, so things like squats, deadlifts, bench press, pull-ups. And the reason that compound movements are so good is because they work multiple muscle groups and you can get a lot more bang for your buck. For the majority of people, I generally recommend putting your compound exercises at the start of your workout because that's when you're going to have more energy, you're going to be able to get more out of them and better results because of that. As you get more advanced, you can start including techniques like putting isolation exercises at the start of your workout, either to better warm up the muscles that you're going to be targeting with your compound exercises or to sort of pre-fatigue those muscles so that you can really just hammer them with the other exercises in your routine. But those are slightly more advanced strategies, so I wouldn't generally recommend that for beginners. Isolation exercises pretty much do what the name suggests and they aim to isolate a certain muscle. So some examples of isolation exercises could be bicep curls, tricep extensions, hamstring curl, leg extension, and they're typically exercises that mainly focus on using one joint or one specific muscle group. But before we cover one technique that's been shown by the science to get you more out of these kind of exercises, you need to make sure that your form is on point. I know I yap about this a lot in my videos, but using proper form and proper exercise execution can get you so much more out of the movements than if you're just swinging the weights around. When I first started the gym, I really wanted to have a massive deadlift. Like, just the feeling of lifting a heck ton of weight off the ground is incredible. But I hadn't learned the proper form before I started whacking more weight on the bar. And I got injured pretty bad. It was a fun time. I could barely walk, so speaking from experience, please get the form down first before you increase the weight. So part 3 is mind-to-muscle connection. This 2015 study showed that focusing on the muscle that you're trying to target during a certain exercise increases the muscle activation within a threshold of between 60 and 80% of your 1 rep max. Mind-to-muscle connection is such a powerful but underrated tool that I think all of us need to learn to start using a bit more. When I was first learning mind-to-muscle connection, I found it easiest to start with muscles that I could actually see. So if you've not quite mastered mind-to-muscle connection yet, I'll give you a couple of exercises you can go and try. 2 general tips that apply to most exercises is use a lighter weight initially to get that connection, and you really want to slow down the reps and focus on the movement itself. You can even try this right now without the weight. So what I want you to do is grab a dumbbell in one hand and place your other hand on your bicep, which is the muscle that you're trying to target. As you're curling the weight up, really focus on your bicep and imagine the muscle fibers themselves tearing apart. For the second exercise, I want you to take the exact same approach, but this time you're going to do leg extensions. Typically, you'll be able to get that mind-to-muscle connection the most when your muscle's in the most contracted position. So for leg extension, that's going to be when you raise your legs up and you're really squeezing your quads. Sometimes putting a hand on the muscle that you're trying to work can help you get that mind-to-muscle connection a bit faster, but getting that connection in the first place is a skill that you need to master, so it will take a bit of practice. Some muscle groups are going to be harder to connect to than others, so for example back, where you can't really see your back. But when it comes to back, actually I have this cute little hack. Cute little hack? Yeah, we'll call it a cute little hack. I don't really know the best way to explain this, but the way that I managed to get a good mind-to-muscle connection with my back muscles when I was doing that pull down is sort of imagining that I had wings, and the movement of me pulling the bar down was like bringing wings back. I don't know. I hope that makes sense, but it's just some little mindset cues that you can give yourself to help you get mind-to-muscle connection a little bit faster. But once you've got the form down and you've got the mind-to-muscle connection connecting, then it's going to make part 4 a lot easier, and that's progressive overload. I've talked about progressive overload a few times in our muscle growth series, which is where we're going through all of the different muscle groups, learning how to train each of them most effectively. So if that's something you're interested in, or if you've got a certain muscle group that's kind of lacking a bit and you want to build some more muscle, then I'll make sure to link that playlist so you can watch it after this video. But to put it simply, first increase the number of reps you can lift until you hit the top of your rep range, then increase the weight. Progressive overload is honestly the key to building muscle, because the idea is that you increase the intensity of your workouts each week, and that creates a greater stimulus on your muscles each week to actually grow. Because if you just kept doing the same workouts and the same sets and the same reps from week to week to week, then your muscles wouldn't have a reason to grow. And if you're putting a certain amount of load on it, it starts to prepare itself for the next time that you're going to do that. So when you're putting a bigger load on it, your body's going to think, oh, I need to be stronger to actually be able to lift that load. And that's when muscle growth and strength increase and adaptation occurs. So to actually make sure that you're applying progressive overload properly, you need to 1, make sure that you're tracking your weights, 2, make sure that you're tracking your reps from week to week, and 3, don't switch up your exercises too often. People will tell you that you need to change your whole workout program every 6 weeks or something like that, but if you're still seeing progress, then there's no reason to change it. There's only really 3 reasons where I would switch up my workouts. The first one being I stopped seeing progress, or I just wasn't progressing as fast as I wanted to with those certain exercises. The second being if those exercises were aggravating a certain injury or they just weren't feeling very good. And thirdly, if I just got bored of the workout plan, because the most important thing about your workouts is that you actually enjoy them. Because when you enjoy what you're doing, you'll be able to get so much more out of it, and you'll likely see more muscle growth because you're putting more effort in. So in the opposite way, if you're enjoying your workouts, if you're seeing good progress from week to week and none of the exercises are aggravating any injuries, then you really don't need to change anything. I do find that I am likely to get a bit bored of some exercises if I've been doing them for months straight. So when that happens, what I tend to do is, because I want to keep the exercises in my routine that are going to get me to my goals, whether that's working on a certain muscle group or increasing strength in a certain exercise, I want to keep those ones in my routine. So the exercises that I'll swap out first are my isolation exercises, and that just gives me a bit more variety, spices the workouts up again, and honestly, that's just always worked to bring some of that enjoyment back into my training, and I've usually been able to see more progress even in the lifts that I didn't change because I've brought that enjoyment back in. But if you don't include this next part in your training routine, then you're not going to get as much out of any of the other strategies. So part 5 is rest and recovery. When it comes to your workouts, if you're training for hypertrophy or muscle growth, you're generally going to be in the 8 to 12 rep range. For most of the exercises in my workouts, I tend to rest between 60 seconds to 2 minutes. 60 seconds being more of the isolation movements, and then 2 minutes being the really heavy compound lifts like squats or hip thrusts or things like that. The reason we want to rest longer for the compound movements is because you're using multiple muscle groups, so you're going to need more time for each of the muscle groups to recover before you go back into your next set, so that you can actually push with the same amount of effort as you just did, or at least close to the same amount of effort. But with isolation exercises, you're obviously only focusing on one muscle group, so you're not going to need as much time to recover. Generally, the way I like to gauge whether I need more rest time or not is if I feel too fatigued to lift that weight again for another set with proper form, then I'll just give myself another 30 seconds and then go for it. I know it's not exactly the most scientific thing in the world, but if you're not sure whether you should go for the next set or not, because you're not sure if you're too fatigued or not, just give another 30 seconds and then go for it, because ultimately you will be able to lift better if you've had more rest. I'm just going to touch on this quickly, but if you're training for strength, you usually want much longer rest periods than if you're training for muscle growth. And essentially that's because when you're lifting, you're training 3 different systems: your muscular system, your skeletal system, and your central nervous system. So when you're training for strength, your muscles are going to need a bit more time to replenish their energy stores, and your central nervous system is going to need a bit more time because you've usually been putting a lot more load on it than you would if you're just training for muscle growth. So having the longer rest period is going to give your central nervous system enough time to recover so that it can effectively produce the most force possible on your next set. When you're training for hypertrophy, some studies do suggest that the shorter rest periods can stimulate more growth hormone, which is important when you're building muscle. But in terms of how long you should rest between workouts, it's generally recommended that you leave at least 24 to 48 hours before training the same muscle group again. This was actually a common misconception, but people used to think that that burning feeling that you get in a really hard workout, that was your muscles growing. But the thing is, your muscles don't actually grow in the gym. They grow in the times where you're resting and recovering, because that's when they're actually not under that stress anymore and they have a chance to grow. I didn't give myself enough rest days when I started the gym, and I saw literally 0 progress. But then I just ditched 1 workout per week completely, and it's actually insane how fast my progress sped up. There was another factor that helped with that, but I'll touch on that in a second. Most people are going to see best results from 2 to 3 rest days per week, but the way that you structure your rest days into your routine will depend on your workout split and the exact muscle groups that you're training and when you're training them. So let's just take my 5-day upper lower split as an example. So on day 1, I train lower body, and to give my lower body enough time to recover before training it again, on day 2, I'll train upper body. And then day 3 will be my second lower body day. So I've had a whole day in between training my lower body again. And this is also the lower body day where I like to focus on slightly different muscles. So day 1 was glutes and hamstrings, and day 3 is quads. So I do have a different emphasis just to make sure that I'm not limiting the recovery of my glutes and hamstrings. Day 4 is a complete rest day, and all I like to do in my rest days is make sure I get my steps in so that I'm still sort of staying active. I'm not just completely lying in bed all day, because that has been shown to help improve recovery. Day 5 is my third lower body day of the week, and since I have that after a complete rest day, I usually feel like I've got a whole lot more energy and I'm able to push really hard in that one. Then day 6 is my second upper body day, and day 7 is a rest day. If you're doing something like a full body split, you'd want to have a rest day after each of your workouts. So you could do day 1 full body, day 2 rest day, day 3 full body, day 4 rest day, day 5 full body, day 6 rest day, rest day. And that's going to make sure that you're not limiting your body's ability to recover and you get the most out of those sessions. For your overall recovery, proper hydration and good sleep is also super important and really underrated by pretty much everyone. I'm going to be completely honest with you, I don't always hit my sleep goals, and it's something that I really want to focus on because sleep can honestly make or break your results. But let me know if there's any challenges that you're currently facing with your training, and I can try and help you out in the comments, or any tips that you have, because I want this video to be as valuable as possible and this series to be as valuable as possible. So drop your tips in the comments. We don't gatekeep here, and I read all the comments, I respond to all my comments, so go and check. I really appreciate you, but I need you to know that none of the tips or the strategies that we've covered in this video are gonna get you the results you want if your nutrition's not on point. So make sure you watch this video next, and I'll see you there.